This is probably my favorite World War I video. WW1 is summary on a map by geohistory. Always love taking a look at historical events from a map perspective. It's actually very important to me. Like on ground level, you need it, just for the human element, of course. But I like maps because it shows the global aspect, because obviously it was a world war. Pretty much the entire globe was affected. Another reason why I think this is the best World War I video is we don't even start around 1914. You really can't. It'd be like starting a movie during the climax, during the third act. We need the exposition first, at the very least. Okay, I've already tried to start this video so many times.
The rise of nationalism undermines
1848.
powers.
We first have to go back to unification of Germany and Italy.
France defeats the Austrian Empire and obtains Italian unification.
We have to get like how the alliances take place, the feeling of the people of Europe at that time. All this context is crucial for understanding. We also need this information to understand why certain countries did the things that they did. That's crucial here.
It allies with the southern German states
to defeat France and finally unifying all of Germany.
The German Empire, which is proclaimed in Versailles. The new country takes over Alsace.
There's Italy as well.
To discourage French.
That's very key right there. They weren't going to keep that forever, obviously. Wait, spoiler alert. I'm going to try not to tell the results of World War I, but I feel like it's safe to say you probably know.
Revenge attacks. Germany moves diplomatically closer to Austria-Hungary and Russia, and it rapidly develops its industry.
Yeah, because remember, it wasn't even that long ago where they weren't necessarily on the same side. There was literally a war between Prussia and the Austrians in 1866, 5 years before German unification. It only lasted 7 weeks, but it's crazy that these two would end up fighting on the same side during the World Wars. I guess you could say the same thing about the British Empire and France. Historically, they were rivals for like 1,000 years. And what's crazy about this 7-week war, which Prussia was allied to Italy, funny enough, just like the Germans of World War II, was it wasn't like this was like a nothing war. Like both sides took heavy casualties. In turn, when it comes to this is part of the reason why France and the UK were going to come a little bit closer.
To discourage French revenge attacks.
Because it's kind of hard to even comprehend that they would one day be on the same side. Remember during the Revolutionary France days, Napoleon took over. I mean, dang, their rivalry was still going. This is only like 50 years earlier.
Diplomatically closer to
60.
Austria-Hungary and Russia, and it rapidly develops its industry and army. In the southeast of the continent, insurgencies threaten the Ottoman Empire.
Yes,
Russia.
There's so many preludes to World War I. I feel like I'm continuing to learn about more and more conflicts that occurred before World War I that led to World War I. I mean, I've always said the prequel was the first Balkan War and then the second Balkan War. But there's also the Italian-Turkish War, which was even before that. This is a key piece of the puzzle, though,
takes advantage of the
because it was, after all, Balkan nationalism that pretty much sets off the whole massive conflict.
Seizes territories. However, Russia's rising status is frowned upon by Western powers, who meet in Berlin to review the treaty.
Obviously, Russia has a close relationship with Serbia.
Public opinion about Germany.
Orthodox.
The latter then signs a defensive military alliance with Austria-Hungary.
So it starts
Italy
1879.
joins the alliance after France seizes Tunisia.
Triple alliance. I mean, this is where all the memes come from. The fact that Italy changes sides. Again, that is a defensive pact. It's very key to remember. They literally put it as the 6th word in the first sentence for the Wikipedia article. Defensive. It was only for defense. Then again, maybe you could argue that, you know, the defensive treaty was already triggered. I don't know. It's complicated.
Which it long covets. The three parties form the Triplice or the Triple Alliance.
Wait, what was that with Tunisia?
Italy joins the alliance after France seizes Tunisia, which it long covets. The three parties
so that pushed
form the
Italy away
Triplice
from
or
France.
The Triple Alliance.
The Triple Entente.
Germany. Now
it's funny because they ended up just calling that the Entente. I love how there's not that many alternative history scenarios that ask. I mean, you would consider. I feel like you would just see a lot more. Like, what if Italy joined the Entente side? Out of the list of alternative history scenarios that I read about, that's lower end, but you'd think it'd be way higher.
Embarks upon a
and there's probably a joke to be made about that, but
the country brings together European powers in Berlin to establish rules around colonization.
All right, so now we have the scramble for Africa, the Berlin Conference. Everyone's going to carve up this entire continent down here.
Then seizes territories in Africa and Asia.
Yeah, so Germany did have colonial holdings. They were going to lose it all after World War I, but people forget that.
British and French colonial empires. Faced with growing German power, France and Russia sign a secret military alliance.
Secret.
France then obtains from Italy a secret treaty of neutrality, which would avoid it having to manage a second front in the event of war. The United Kingdom also feels threatened by Germany's rise, especially by its military fleet, which can compete
because remember that is, at the end of the day, the British's main goal. Just don't let anyone else have a stronger navy than you. Their entire military philosophy has been based off this for centuries. If you have more boats than them, then you can theoretically land on their British Isles, taking them over. So not at all surprised that the British did not like that the Germans were building up their boats.
Its own royal navy. Moreover, Germany moves diplomatically closer to the Ottoman Empire. Notably,
yes, of course, they were
by
going to join the
building
Entente.
a railway line to link Berlin to Baghdad and facilitating access to Mesopotamian oil coveted by the British Empire.
Yeah,
France,
which they would eventually get that.
Kingdom
France
and Russia then sign a military
and the British
alliance
would carve up the Middle
and
East.
create the Triple Entente.
Oh, the other Triple Entente. I forgot that there's technically two. What the heck? Because the Triple Entente with Italy, I guess, wasn't really a thing. Trigger.
The alliances risk dragging the entire continent into war. Major powers embark upon an arms race and prepare military plans. In the southeast of the continent...
Funny how like Spain and Portugal just completely left out. I mean, Portugal had an alliance with the British, and they've had it for a really long time. But Spain, kind of like the Ottomans, could have also been considered the dying man of Europe. They were pretty much dead by now,
by
but...
a revolution.
Especially considering 1908, the Spanish-American War occurred, so Spain permanently lost like all their overseas territories. They would also end up losing the Philippines and Puerto Rico. This was the final death blow. That was in 1898. But I also really wish this video talked about the Russo-Japanese War, which dealt a significant blow to the Russian Empire and their legitimacy, Japan picking up a massive dub in that conflict. Like, I know World War I, the Great War, begins because of European things, but the global aspect of it, too, is a pretty key factor. I also think that stuff's just interesting.
By a revolution,
Austria context
takes
of
advantage
how everyone is,
and annexes Bosnia and Herzegovina.
What everyone's thinking.
This move is opposed by Russia, and especially Serbia, which dreams of uniting the Slavic peoples of the south.
Well, they
Then two
would.
Balkan wars pushed the Ottoman
First
Empire
Balkan War,
to the borders of the continent.
Second Balkan War going after Bulgaria.
On June 28, 1914 in Sarajevo, the heir
And here
to
we
the
go.
Austrian throne, Francois Ferdinand, and his
See,
wife
this is why I couldn't make a video like this, because I would just take way too long to talk about the backstory, talk about way too many conflicts that probably don't matter all that much, but I like to talk about them.
Assassinated by a Bosnian Serb nationalist. Austria-Hungary accuses Serbia of having organized the attack. Russia defends Serbia, while Germany, now the world's leading military power, supports its Austro-Hungarian ally.
Yep. And here we go. World War I has begun. So the Archduke got murked there,
On July
and
28th,
basically a bunch of declarations of war got declared, and well, you just kind of wake up and like, oh, I guess the entire world's fighting each other.
Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Russia reacts by decreeing a general mobilization of its troops, triggering Germany to launch its military plan. To avoid having to
30th
fight
of July.
simultaneously on two fronts, Germany plans to quickly defeat France by bypassing its armies by launching a surprise attack from the north.
So funny because it wouldn't work in World War I, but it would work in World War II. And you think the French would have expected them to do that with the whole Maginot Line thing. But to be fair, they did. They just weren't expecting the Germans to be that quick and that good at the time. But anyways, 2 world wars, Germany going through Belgium. This is why that nation is often called the speed bump of Europe.
By bypassing its armies by launching a surprise attack from the north. It would then focus on Russia, whose troops would take more time to mobilize.
And
Germany
again,
declares war on Russia.
love that he talked about that aspect, because a certain skinny mustache man would successfully do that strategy in World War II. They did knock out the French, and then they eventually declared the war on Russia. Soviet Union, of course, at that time.
And issues an ultimatum to Belgium, demanding right of passage for its troops. Belgium refuses, insisting upon its neutrality.
Yeah,
The following day,
wasn't
Germany
work for
declares war
Belgium. It was going to work for the Netherlands at this time.
on France and launches the offensive. The United Kingdom, which guarantees Belgian neutrality, in turn declares war on Germany and sends its troops to France. In a few days, all European powers, as well as Montenegro, go to war.
Even
Only
Montenegro.
Italy remains neutral at this stage.
I only just recently found out that like Serbia, Montenegro, they get just blown up. They got demolished by the Austrians. The Austro-Hungarians, I guess.
In Asia, Japan, which is allied with the United Kingdom,
I mean, it's complicated, more complicated than that, but
and prepares for an invasion of its colonies in China and the North Pacific Ocean.
Yes, the Japanese
on the Eastern Front
obviously were a part of the Allied powers. World War I, ended up switching sides. See, they deserve a little bit of the switching side meme, a little bit, because, well, yeah, Japan definitely had a turn of character, I guess.
Russia launches its offensive earlier than Germany expects, but fails to gain ground in East Prussia, while further south, Austria-Hungary retreats.
Oof.
In the west, the Allied armies cannot hold back the German advance. The Franco-British armies retreat to Marne, where they reorganize, while the French government flees the capital to take refuge in Bordeaux.
Dang.
But the first German army holding the flank pivots away from Paris to join with the Second Army and continue surrounding Allied forces.
Devastating.
The Parisian Reserve Army attacks further north, stopping in its tracks the German advance.
This is only September. I mean, this is only 3 months. Not even. It's like 2 months, and the Germans almost got the capital of France. I don't even think we can imagine how different the world would have been if France capitulates here. It's insane. The ripple effects, too, like we would live in a completely different modern day.
German retreat. This is a failure of the Schlieffen Plan. When the front stabilizes, the two camps attempt to outflank each other and embark upon a race to the sea. For Germany, it is also a question of isolating Belgium and seizing ports where British reinforcements and supplies land.
It really shows, like, I love these videos, battle plans and history. There's so much about, like, military doctrine for certain countries that doesn't change. Like, it stays very much similar. We were talking about the British, you know, always wanting the biggest navy in the world to protect their sovereignty, to protect their islands. Germany had, like, the same plan, kind of similar plan, to attack France in both world wars. It was just more successful in World War II.
Belgian army barely succeeds.
They almost tried to do a Dunkirk here. They basically did try to do a Dunkirk.
Trenches are dug on both sides.
And I feel like if you were to ask Germany right now how they would attack France, it wouldn't change all that much compared to the world wars. I mean, all these would still be on the table, probably the most likely option. And I think the thing that it really comes down to is it is a geography thing. That is the underlying similarity between all this stuff. War and geography go hand in hand, of course.
700 kilometers between the North
and political
Sea
geography
and
too, the borders
border.
At the time. But physical geography, total war.
Now that the Western Front is frozen, both sides use full force to attack the enemy. The war becomes total. The mighty Royal Navy imposes a naval blockade on Germany, while German submarines are sent to British waters to sink all ships and vessels. Aviation, which is still a recent invention, is used.
That's a whole other aspect. That's why World War I is just, like, honestly kind of freaky, because technologically a lot of stuff was really brand new to us. But at that very same time, cavalry was still a very big thing. You had this really weird confusion of old military tech and new military tech. Planes, of course, being a new thing.
Planes would then gradually be used for bombing and
they had only figured out planes not that many decades earlier. The Wright brothers only figured out aviation 11 years before World War I broke out.
Airships to bomb
airships is a whole other aspect
of England
of it.
Around 50 times. Both sides use lethal gases to attack the enemy in the trenches. Behind the front lines, entire
I don't know, World War I has like some really weird steampunk vibes to it, which is obvious that, okay,
involved in arms factories. Around the world, European colonies and British dominions are engaged in war. They seize German colonies and supply large reinforcements of soldiers.
Well,
to the front
Germany
lines.
wasn't going to be able to help all that stuff out if they didn't have
on the
naval
Eastern Front,
dominance.
Russia is in trouble with Austro-German troops. The Ottoman Empire seizes the opportunity to go to war alongside the Central Powers. A new front opens in the Caucasus.
So November, this is only
Indian army in Mesopotamia,
5 months after,
with the goal to take control of oil resources. In reaction, the Central Powers launch an offensive towards the Suez Canal to cut supply lines from India, but are stopped in their advance. In the Caucasus, after the failure of the Ottoman offensive, the government accuses the Armenian people of having supported Russia.
Pretty rough stuff.
In retaliation, more than half of the Armenian population would be massacred in what is today recognized as genocide by 32 countries, but not by Turkey.
Yeah.
To support geographically
and actually one U.S. state
Russia,
doesn't recognize it either. State of Mississippi, although that might have changed recently. Oh, they recognized it finally just 2 years ago, but they were holding out for a while.
Allies want to open a sea supply route via the Dardanelles Strait. Franco-British ships enter the strait to bomb Ottoman forts,
Yeah,
but
Gallipoli.
find the waters full of sea mines, forcing
The
a
Australians
retreat.
know about this.
A month later, on April 25, Allies organized
there,
a
the
military
Australians,
landing, but
Kiwis.
Ottoman defenses hold steady, creating another deadlocked war front.
Yeah, this was going to prove that naval invasions are not the easiest thing. A lot of fear that that would repeat during the D-Day invasion for World War II.
During its
You had to be a little
war,
weary.
Germany sinks the British ship Lusitania, causing 1,200 civilian victims, including 128 US citizens. The United States,
that was a big one.
officially neutral until that point, registers protest. To prevent the US from going to war, Germany slows its submarine warfare. Italy, after
obviously that didn't
negotiating
work
with the
out,
Triple
but-
Entente to annex new territories, declares war on Austria-Hungary and launches an offensive around the
There it
Isonzo
is.
River.
Italy,
On
quote-unquote,
the eastern
switching
front,
sides.
Russia completes its retreat and stabilizes the battlefront. Bulgaria, which wishes to recover Balkan territories, joins the Central Powers.
Everyone forgets about
Together with
Bulgaria.
Austro-German
Some good memes
forces,
about that,
they
though.
invade Serbia. In reaction, the Allies violate the neutrality of Greece by using Salonika to land reinforcements coming from fronts such as the Dardanelles,
Yep,
where
spicy
Ottoman
move there.
victory is complete. But it is too late for the overwhelmed Serbian army.
I don't know why, like, the first thing I'm thinking about right now, like, violating neutral things. It just reminds me kind of like Vietnam, because there was lots of violation of neutral countries, quote unquote, moving through their territory, Cambodia and Laos. I don't know why this is coming up into my head right now, to be honest, but
that flees via Albania. Troops are landed on the island
this is just
of
a thing that
Corfu,
happens in war.
from where they will be gradually brought back to the Macedonian front. On the western front, Germany launches a massive offensive in Verdun. The German artillery pounds French trenches, which resists as
The
best
tanks
they
back in these
can.
days, very
In
strange.
the south of the continent, Portugal, allied with the United Kingdom, confiscates German ships in its port. In response, Germany declares war on Portugal, who then sends troops to France and to its colonies in Africa, where only German East Africa still resists the Allied offensives.
Yeah, Portugal, after all this time, still loyal to the British. It's crazy. Allied counterattack, 1916.
In Mesopotamia, the United Kingdom, after losing its besieged army in Kut, seeks support in the region. It secretly negotiates with France the partition of Ottoman territories.
Yeah,
at
they
the
were
end
ready
of the
to
war.
carve this place
The two
up.
powers then support an Arab nationalist revolt which starts in Mecca by promising them independence. In the North Sea, German and British fleets face off in one of the
Very
largest
interesting.
naval
Well,
battles in history.
I was going to talk about some of the results of World War I, but I guess we'll wait till it gets there. It's funny that both the Austro-Hungarians and the Ottoman Empire were gone after this. Germany probably
Despite
wishes they were
heavy
gone after
losses
this.
on the British side, the
But
Germans,
they were kept around.
small in number, during the night take refuge in their port. While the Battle of Verdun is still ongoing and Italy is under pressure from Austria-Hungary, Russia attempts to relieve its allies by launching a massive offensive that succeeds in piercing through opposition defenses. In the
So we're gonna
west,
talk about the Russian
another
Civil War that
great
happens
offensive is
soon.
launched along the Somme, with Britain spearheading the attack. They would use tanks for the first time, but to no avail.
War fatigue.
While Romania
I mean, you're
joins the
talking
Entente,
2 years
the
after,
Brusilov
and it's still
offensive in
going
the
on.
East, and the battles of the Somme and Verdun all end, having caused tremendous casualties on both sides. Troops
Oh yeah,
are
we didn't talk about the
exhausted
first
and
Christmas.
demoralized. In Germany, the war effort and the Allied trade embargo prevent the country from getting enough food, causing widespread famine. Western powers, on the other hand, can count on a supply
so the
of
US are about to
resources
join in.
via the
This is
Atlantic,
1917
mainly from
soon.
the United States, towards whom they are now in debt. In response, Germany relaunches unrestricted submarine warfare with the objectives of sinking all commercial and military ships. In addition, Germany sends a telegram to Mexico offering an alliance against the United States. The message
This is pretty insane, honestly. The more I look into the Zimmerman telegram, it's just like, man, what were y'all thinking? Mexico was literally in a very violent revolution during that time. The nation was just all completely carved up. So to think that Mexico would be able to just defeat the US at that point during
the message is
their
intercepted
history,
by Britain and transmitted to the United States, which then prepares to
I mean,
go
to be
war.
honest, it might have been kind of like a thing that was sent as like, haha, just joking, but not really if you want to do it. Like maybe they forgot to put LOL at the end of the text message. The Germans did to Mexico. But yeah, the US made it a really big deal, of course, and the UK definitely made it a really big deal. So that way the US joins the war. Because again, it maybe, yeah, Russia and the United States.
In Russia, the war effort exhausts the population, who revolt and cause the Tsar to abdicate.
So
A
Russia's
provisional
out,
government
USA is
put
in.
into place, which chooses to continue the war. The United States, in turn, declares war on Germany,
Well, the
but it
Russians-
would take
the Russians are
several
about to be
months
out.
for the first troops to join the front lines. Greece, which is under pressure from the Allies, joins the Entente. In both camps, exhausted soldiers begin mutinies.
3 years now.
On the Isonzo front, 11 similar Italian offensives yield little result at the cost of many lives, further affecting troop morale. Austro-German troops counterattack and push back the front
And
line.
remember that this was the bloodiest conflict that had ever taken place in history at that point. 3 years of just this chaotic fighting. Obviously, all the world was done with this.
At the gates of Gaza, after a victory, British armies prepare to enter Palestine.
Seeing all the revolts,
To gain the support of the Jewish
Unsurprising.
community, British Prime Minister Arthur Balfour publishes a statement
especially when like it wasn't really like the front lines were changing all that much. I'm sure people were like, what are we doing this for?
addressing Lord Rothschild, a leader of the British Zionist Federation.
Well, that's literally why there's
promising
a whole bunch of
state for
films
the
about World
Jewish
War I
people in
is
Palestine.
about that. What are we
In
doing
Russia,
this for? That's
the
like
Bolsheviks
literally the
organize
biggest
a second
question.
revolution and seize power. They sign an armistice with Germany, but after the breakdown of negotiations, war resumes. Austro-German forces put the Russian army out of action, forcing the country to accept a peace treaty and recognize the independence of new states.
Briefly, I mean, look at this. We could have had a Ukraine and a Belarus like more than 50 years. I've seen that Courland is here. Famous Latvian colonizers, they were
Russia then sees the start of a civil war.
falling empires. So now Russia's out. Obviously,
With
USA
Russia
was in.
out of the game, Germany concentrates on the
USA was
going
gonna
to
come in with their
win
double-barrel
before
shotguns.
US troops grow in strength. A large-scale offensive is launched lasting 4 months, and German troops push their way to Marne again. But a powerful Allied counter-offensive forces German troops to retreat. In parallel, the Allies launch an offensive on the Macedonian front,
With
which
Serbs?
quickly forces Bulgaria to sign an armistice. The Ottoman
Bam.
Empire
They
finds
just cut
itself
off the
isolated,
supply lines.
while Arab-British forces reach Damascus as the French land in Beirut. Austria-Hungary retreats to the Balkans and to Italy. The empire is also weakened by minority separatists who proclaim their independence.
Well, I mean, it's amazing that Austria-Hungary was even able to stay around for that long. With all the different languages and cultures in that one singular nation, just such a Frankenstein place.
Followed by Austria-Hungary, sign an armistice with the
Bam,
Entente.
gone.
In Germany, sailors refuse to fight the Royal Navy and start a mutiny, which turns into a popular revolt. The Kaiser is forced to abdicate, and Germany's new government requests an armistice, which is signed on November 11, 1918.
Treaty of Versailles, here we go. There's been many treaties of Versailles,
Over
but
a
this is
period
probably the
of
most
6
popular one.
months, victors of the war meet in Paris to draw up peace treaties.
So like I was
without
saying,
inviting
Germany probably wished they were dead. I'm saying that because of the payments they were going to have to give to the Allies, to France. They weren't going to be happy. They were going to be so mad that they, elected the skinny mustache man and took off their anger in World War II.
Bolshevik Russia, who signed a separate peace treaty with Germany. The United States proposes a peace plan which includes the creation of the League of Nations. The United Kingdom,
Early
and
days of the
especially
UN.
France, whose northern territory is devastated, want to weaken Germany and make it pay heavy reparations. June 28, 1919 proves to be a symbolic date because 5 years after the assassinations at Sarajevo, a peace treaty is signed between Germany and the Allies at Versailles, in the same room where the German Empire had been proclaimed in 1871.
Crazy. That's a
The
crazy
measures
fact.
imposed on Germany are severe. The country loses 20% of its territory and 10% of its population, mainly to the benefit of Poland, which is recreated and which obtains access to the sea.
Polish corridor.
Germany is cut in two.
Literally
while the
destined to kind of dooming Poland. Like Germany and Poland were destined to go to war for that.
Our region, rich in coal, is brought under international control for 15
Obviously, they
years.
would.
German colonies are carved up among the victors. The country's
Japan
army
gets some,
is severely
British.
dismantled. Finally, Germany and its allies are considered solely responsible for war damages and must pay all reparations. The treaty is considered a humiliation by the German people.
And then they're just gone.
Austria-Hungary
They're dying
is
together.
completely dismantled. Czechoslovakia and the Kingdom of the Serbs, Croats and Slovens are created. Italy feels
Not yet
aggrieved as
Yugoslavia.
it does not obtain all the territories it was promised.
So Italy's
Austria,
mad.
which is entirely
Gonna elect
German
Benito for
speaking,
that.
is denied the right to be attached to Germany. The
That is
Ottoman
crazy, though,
Empire is also
'cause Italy joined in
dismembered
so
during
early.
the Treaty of Sèvres. The UK struggles to keep its word, having promised land to the French, the Zionist Jews, and independence to the Arabs. The Turks refuse the treaty and take up arms again.
Yep.
They gain some territories, then sign in Lausanne a treaty fixing the new borders of Turkey.
Well, the consequences are pretty obvious, right?
The First
second-
World War,
a sequel.
or the so-called Great War, was then the deadliest ever, with just under 18 million
Yes.
dead, including 8 million civilians. The
That's
weakened
crazy.
population was then hit hard by the deadly Spanish flu pandemic.
Yep.
Economically, European powers find themselves heavily indebted to the benefit of neutral countries and the United States, which
Yep.
strengthens its status as a leading economic power. Russia becomes the USSR.
It took technically 2 world wars for the US to be, well, the #1 nation. 2 world wars and a Cold War, because they had to go beat the USSR, obviously.
Country exhausted by war and frustrated by the loss of many European territories. In Palestine, tensions mount between Arabs and the Zionist Jews who migrate there. The new European borders disgruntle many. The fact that some German populations are now living in Poland and Czechoslovakia would contribute to the outbreak of the Second World War.
Yeah, that's their claim to have those lands. Fun fact, Berlin-Baghdad Railroad is still operational. All European powers, as well as Montenegro. Sad Montenegro noises. The British, when they violate Greek neutrality, I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that. The British, when Germany violates Belgian neutrality, now this looks like a job for me. Fun fact, to contribute to the war effort, German women gave their gold marriage rings and replaced them with iron ones. In both world wars, we learned that Germany is a monster, good at everything except for finding allies that are useful. That is their biggest flaw, crazy enough. It always feels like it's just Germany literally putting the team on their back. To be fair, Japan did alright in World War II. Switzerland be like, wow, great movie! And they were gonna watch another one. Again, that video is by GeoHistory, please go check them out. And here are my patrons.
I finally escaped from Drew's basement.
Lucas, the Canadian
LuxembourgLover.
Christmas
Drew's
trees, Honk,
Argentinian Grandpa.
NordTyrol,
I'm back, boys.
DOOCHBAGGINS. Imperial Japan
Kirino
flag is the
is
same as
best
modern
girl.
Japan.
Koyle.
Please stop making this mistake. It's
Amateur
Archaeology.
aPhatNarwhal.
Carmel
Connor
Pavlik.
DaBeautiful-MEGAN-Underwood.
Fredrik Tibblin,
InquisitorXarius.
Tambre,
Tambre.
Mexican
And
76